All right, can you hear me out? How about now? Yeah? All right, excellent. So, local is really exciting, and I think of it almost in the way. Now you can't hear me. How about now? There we go. Local is very exciting, and I think it's ahead of what we oftentimes hear about mobile. Every year, it's kind of the joke that this is going to be the year for mobile, and then it just kind of ticks along. And local's kind of been that way as well. There's going to be this big local revolution. But I actually think we do see more of that. And people get excited about the various applications, the various tools that are out there. They see a lot of growth potential that's happening. But, you know, is it actually paying for itself? And that's the focus of this session that we've got here. We've got a broad spectrum of people who make local their business and earn from it, ranging from ads to license fees to even consumers actually paying huge amounts of money for GPS. Well, maybe not so huge anymore. And so we're going to talk about that. I'd actually let each of the speakers introduce themselves to you, because then it helps me not mispronounce their names, which is terrible. And also I'd like you to just give a little bit of short background again of the business units that you're overseeing, and then we'll go with some questions from there, if that's all right. And I'm looking at you, Marc, so we'll down at the end.
So Marc Law, Vice President of Product, MapQuest, have responsibility for the products of both .com, our mobile products, as well as our B2B enterprise business.
Yeah, so Michael Halbherr, I'm from Nokia. I run what we call social location, which includes mapping, search, and the stuff that we have seen today in the keynote.
I'm Marc Prioleau. I'm the CEO of CloudMade, and CloudMade is a company that's built to commercialize some of the very fine work that's being done by the OpenStreetMap community.
I'm Tyler Bell. I'm the product lead for the Yahoo Geotechnologies group.
And then I'll start off with a simple question. How are you making money? Maybe that's what Kim. Are you making money? But it would be useful if you could describe the various ways that it's coming in. I mean, if we're looking at some of your businesses, you have multiple revenues that are coming in. So I'm curious as to the ways that local is generating revenue for you, and to the degree that some maybe the bright spots or weak spots as you're seeing it from your perspective. And we can start whoever is making the most money.
I'll start.
Okay.
Actually, I can't see if any of my board members are out here. I better be careful how I answer this. So CloudMade is a startup. We're pre-revenue, but to the question, CloudMade is built because of what we saw happening in the OpenStreetMap foundation in that community. And Steve Coase, who started that, was a founder of CloudMade along with Nick Black. And one of the foundations of OpenStreetMap is, as I think a lot of you guys know, is it is all about community-based mapping. And what people tend to map is the stuff they care about. They map their neighborhood, they map the hobbies they have, they map the places their kids go to school, whatever it is, and they map what. So the content that derives out of that is very hyperlocal and they're very personal. Our belief is that in the end gives a very interesting database. And so then you take it to the other side, the monetization with the developers. And there's a popular applications marketplace out there that says, are you interested in mountain biking? We got an app for that. Our belief is the developer is going to want to have data for that and not, gee, let me check with business affairs and see if I can get you a business model for that. And so in that context, I think there's some real benefits to that very hyper-local as it plays into the new app marketplaces.
Okay. You, Tyler, I'll make you go next.
So there's, my take on this is twofold. One is you can monetize by checking ads against the map. Or you can do the other thing, which is actually have an informed, these all go hand in hand, but the map is not the end experience, but actually location becomes a means to the end. And so here you've got geo-targeted content, geo-targeted advertising. The whole point is to actually increase engagement. You increase engagement with your site, you get more users, they're staying longer, and then that can be monetized through extant means. And geo is a huge, importantly part of this. But when you look at locality, and Marc today talked about hyperlocality, people will engage with things that are immediately relevant to them for longer periods of time. And probably everybody up here has done studies that effectively prove that. So really at Yahoo, that's what we are looking to do. We are looking to use geography and geodata and local data to inform the entire network experience, which does this wonderful thing which you get so rarely in the world, which is usually a teeter-totter between monetization and user quality experience. If you get the geo right, they both rise. And that's the holy grail that we're looking for.
But improving on Yahoo in the end for the advertising to be making the funding mechanism.
It's the advertising, but it's also engagement. So those
right.
are two sides of almost quite literally the same coin.
So I'd like to actually continue with that thought, because I think that's actually a challenge we've had. MapQuest is, we've been a very ad-centric model, both within the sponsored listings component as well as a display ad, but also paid content in the context of Yellow Pages. So when you have business listings up, you make money when people make a selection and then click on the content. And it's interesting because, you know, there's been quite a bit of criticism about the implementation of our site relative to how many ads we have on the site. I've been there about a year and a few months, and what I've found is we have transformed a lot of the advertising on the site over time. And it takes time, because once there's an expected revenue stream, you know, you can't just go take it all off, because there's an expectation of arbiter and contribution margins. So what's interesting, though, is over the year that I've been there, we've been spending a lot of time looking at the user's interactions with the ads. Pixel space is valuable. I understand that. Everyone in this room understands that pixel space is valuable, especially above the fold. And what we've really actually started to tune is tune the actual right ads for people who want to click on them. Because if we didn't put up ads that nobody clicked on, we wouldn't get paid anyway. And what I'm actually looking at in terms of our performance management tools is actually looking at a data-driven exercise that says, what is the performance of the content, what is the performance of the ad, and balancing ads that actually meet the needs of the user. And that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but the ads, if they're not relevant, if they're not contextually componentized to actually have clicks, you won't make any money. So it is a long process. It's not something you can just do overnight unless you get executive approval to just take them all off. But there is another strategy here, is that in the content of sponsored links that we've been putting up, if you start looking at the evolution of our changes, even in the last 12 months, you will see that those sponsored links are getting more in tune with the search query the person's doing, or not. It's a relevant associated query. So if someone searches for restaurants, you'll actually see an associated query now of results that might be movie theaters, ATM machines, things that are associated with the activity of the person, and they're much more locally relevant, to the point that you move towards a paid content strategy. So you move away from traditional just business listings throwing them up to, can you actually, are people willing to pay you for your audience, to get access to that audience that's content driven? And with the local content that we did on the local content site, no one pays us for that content, and we don't pay anybody else for that content. It's a completely open model. So the partners come to us, give us the content, including Flickr, and there is no exchange of money, and we simply have one ad on that site that is tied to a geo-targeting experience. So the ad is related to the city, or it's related to the context of what the person's looking at, and it's actually something that people are engaging with more directly. So yeah, we make money. It's no hidden feat, but it's a balance. And I agree with Tyler here. What's becoming the challenge is the yin and yang of user experience with revenue. And you can go too far either way. Make it all user experience, and therefore it becomes dominated by that. Or you can move towards the revenue side and overpower your revenue, which ends up losing your user base. So I agree with the construct that it's now really becoming that finite balance between the two.
Maybe I close the round, because we have a slightly different model where we come historically, because we come at Nokia from selling a function which is navigation or pedestrian guidance. So what we have done over the last 2 years is we have taken a function that you usually pay a couple $100 for into the range of tens of dollars, and actually scaled it across the entire portfolio of devices, which is in 80, 90 countries. We then tried to improve on the navigation function to take it into the pedestrian realm, and we have seen quite some response from the users. Actually, they rank pedestrian almost as high as car navigation. And the way we monetize it is by actually building solutions. So when you get a Nokia handset, you no longer get a GPS-enabled handset. You get a handset with new, novel type of functions. So you can actually, out of the box, you can navigate around, and that also allows us to increase the premium on the handset. So it's a different model. It's a little bit more what you have from an ecosystem like an Xbox, where you have a kind of a mixture between the actual software and the hardware. Of course, we'll look into advertisements as well, but I'm actually with you. I think at the end of the day, when you buy a handset with a strong brand and you pay for it, you need to see advertisement as additional value. It can't be something that is being pushed to you. So only when we have models that are so contextual that the user actually sees it as an integral part of the product will we do it.
I think on the mobile side, there's also an additional challenge. So we have mobile products out there. We have a navigation turn by turn. We have a free Maps app which runs on the BlackBerry devices, etc. And we have web browser applications, like our local product is now on the iPhone in a web browser. The challenge comes as you go into mobile. It used to be traditionally a subscription model. You'd pay for the product, you pay for the client app, and then you get it. The market's shifting. The market's shifting away from, even in the map space, having subscription-based models to, it's advertising. But the volume by which you must then generate to cover even a $3.99 app that's available on a Nokia handset, to then transfer that into an ad model, your actual scale has to go even bigger than the current usage base. Like, meaning you almost have to generate page views to create impressions, to create ads, to even make up $3.99 per month per user. So it's interesting how the mobile marketplace has gone two ways. It's gone completely ad-free with some of the apps. It's gone completely free in some of the apps like you see on the iPhone. And then other people have kind of marginalized the value of the product by bringing the price down to 99 cents. And so the challenge now becomes with underlying data, which is where the premise started, where the underlying data still costs money. Navtech data, TeleAtlas data still costs money. How do you scale where the audience is moving to a mobile maps environment? How do you scale that enough to offset those costs?
Yeah, so maybe a few comments on this one. So I think the basic mapping routing experience is free, and that's about building audience, also to capture more on the average selling price of the device. But when it comes to navigation, we historically have not believed in a subscription model. Especially outside of the US, people are very reluctant to actually enter a subscription model. So for us, this is a solution business. So when you get a Nokia handset, you get actually lifetime access to the software or the service, and you pay it with the price and purchase at the point of sales.
But I mean, it seems like there's kind of the classic model, which is I'm going to give you a service and charge you for it in some ways, which is a subscription model kind of thing. And then there's we're not going to charge you for anything, but we're going to hit you with a bunch of ads. I don't know that completely explains the monetization model, because it seems to me that at some level the core to this thing, and I'm not sure what Nokia's thoughts are on this, but at some level the core to this is who owns the consumer mobile internet experience. And what's been shown is that's some combination of services on the device and applications that are served to that over whatever media. And a core part of that is location. So it seems to me that one of the sort of soft monetizations of location is in customer attraction, reducing churn, and really, in the end, ownership of the customer. And the guys who want to own the mobile customer experience are the guys who are making a big investment in location, I think irrespective of subscription models or advertising models today. I mean, I think that's a third component in there.
On the mobile platform, who do you think sort of wins on the seesaw right now? Is it the hardware maker and i.e. the platform, or is it the applications that would be running on that, or do we not know?
Who wins between the hardware guy and the...
I mean, we have the iPhone because it's an elegant platform. A lot of people like it. But then you also have apps that run very nicely on it. And if suddenly you can only get the apps on Android or BlackBerry or something like that.
And maybe there's not all one winner. But I mean, one of the other questions in the mobile space is who wins between the operator and the platform provider. And so I've been doing a little poll for about a year for iPhone users, and I ask them, do you consider yourself an Apple customer or an AT&T customer? And I've had pretty good unanimity. In fact, I've had 100% uniformity in the answer. That's a pretty significant sea change if you're a mobile operator that's used to owning the customer experience. So I think that owning of the mobile internet experience... Oh, yes, good guess. That owning of that experience is a fairly key thing. Whether you monetize it directly as a rev share or anything, I don't know. But it's fairly key in the value chain, I think.
So, good.
Well, there's one thing that none of us have talked about yet, so I'm going to raise it, which is lead gen. I mean, everything that we are, unless this is a later issue.
No, we swing around.
Okay. So everything we're talking about are things that we've done before, like driving directions, geo-targeted ads. And we're doing well and we can do that better. When I say we, I mean everybody in this room who's concerned about monetizing geo and their applications. That's good. There's room to grow there. But really what we can do now is the four of us up here could together, we could deliver to a massive number of users highly relevant information that's targeted to them and where they are. And then we can follow them in through the door. And we can offer them true value on coming in through the door into that business in which they are already going to be interested. So I think what we're going to see now is with the advent of the mobile internet, and especially the mobile geo web, we are going to begin to see that gap, which is actually quite a chasm now, between advertising and customers and the metrics, tying those results together. That's actually going to be direct now. And so I, as a small business owner, I will pay good money to get people through my door if it's of high value. And I think increasingly, as we begin to look forward, the individuals in this room who are concerned about bringing people to geo-relevant information and geo-relevant information to people are going to be increasingly looking towards lead gen as the best, most highly valuable opportunity to engage and monetize that experience.
So one of the things that I feel fortunate about at MapQuest is we actually own our mobile and our .com experience. So I actually look at the user as not... The mistake I think we actually make in some of our business models is we look at the mobile platform as a separate customer to our .com platform. And we treat them like they're two separate people. When in fact, it's the same person. They just happen to want to look at the map on the mobile device and they want to look at it on .com. So when you look at the real value proposition to the actual individual user, both from an advertising and content point of view, when you actually treat them as a single customer and a single person, just happen to have two media by which they're accessing your content, you should look at them as a single value in terms of any monetization scheme as well. So for instance, one of the things we launched in the fall was My Places. And it was just very simply a way for a person to save their maps, the directions, after they've done it. And I talked a little bit in my presentation about how many people do trip planning on MapQuest, and you plan those days in advance. Well, the last thing you want to do when you're doing a trip 3 days in advance is just print it and then lose the paper and never have it again. So we did My Place, we saved it. And then what we did in the mobile product was we actually embedded My Places into our MapQuest for mobile so that you could actually connect the server and pull the map up. And for that, I viewed the user as one use. I didn't use them as, oh, I've got to monetize them on mobile and I've got to monetize them on .com. What I look at is the total value of the user relative to both experiences. And the challenge, I think, in that yin and yang poll is when you've made enough money off the user, it's kind of a funny term, but when you've made enough money off the user, give them the experience without the interference of ads, if that's appropriate, and balance between the two. So this is another thing, I think, is that we make this mistake that we think mobile audiences are a different audience from the .com, and we try to monetize both to maximize revenue on both.
One of the things I was wondering is I enjoyed a lot of the earlier presentations, the footprint tracking, everything we were going, and this will sound bad, but I wanted to describe them as either fun or seemingly useless when you first look at them because you think, well, do I really need to do this? Do you need that? But when you look at some of the data that you're gathering from that, where people are going, where you're having co-occurrences of interest and such like that, suddenly something that just seems perhaps trivial or just a trivia kind of thing or a fun type of thing, there are business models in that as well. How much do you see that kind of data as being crucial to what you're doing in terms of making money, to be able to, do you have to have fun apps that are tracking everybody everywhere for you to there be able to understand what you should be doing for people in local?
So I think at the end of the day, what you want to do with the data is, and I think Sandy makes good points in his presentations on that, you want to give a kind of value back to the user, right? So I think what we want to do is make more contextual, more relevant applications. So essentially that the system is becoming very smart about you in a good anonymous way to make it more relevant what you are getting as an experience, whether it's better routes, whether it's basically what we call a place graph that acts like a concierge in a hotel that gives you kind of personal advice where you are. I think it has to be connected to value. Otherwise, you can't just collect the data. And then I think the critical question comes if somebody like Nokia collects that database, to what extent will make this available to third-party developers to contextualize then their applications? and then make it more relevant. And I think in there is also, of course, an ad model, because if you then start to put ads there that get clicked on or basically get used, only then actually will the ad model work, because the merchant sees no value if nobody visits him and he doesn't have more business, and the user doesn't see any value if he never clicks on it. So I think we need to make sure that we find through that a way of making ads more relevant.
I mean, CloudMade is built on OpenStreetMap, and I mean, the whole premise there is there's nobody telling the people who are putting data into OpenStreetMaps what to map. We don't sit there and say, you know, gee, thou shalt map this or that. They map whatever they want, and if they don't have a field to map it into, we create a new one. And so the database potentially gets extraordinarily rich. And you know, and I think for any one of us, we can look at that and say, well, geez, who wants that? That's garbage. But to someone that was important, and to someone that becomes a very interesting app. So then you match that against the application environment, which is going from sort of 20 LBS companies that actually made any money to one where there are tens of thousands going to hundreds of thousands. It becomes all about niche, small applications that meet people with the data they're interested in. And so I think that's crucial. It's certainly fundamental to where we're going with that.
Any last comments that we can squeeze in? Is it 30 seconds we got left there? Or is that my wrap-up 30 seconds? If you could wrap up, that would be awesome. Yeah, we can totally wrap up. We're done.
How do you really feel?
I do. That was easy. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you very much. Thank you.